I used to believe that if I were kind enough, patient enough, loving enough, then no one would ever abandon me. But kindness isn't a shield against betrayal. And sometimes the very people you trust the most are the ones who push you off the edge. My name is Ava Hartman. I'm 30 years old and live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Back then, I was the marketing director of a major retail corporation, managing over 200 employees, living in a penthouse downtown and engaged to the man I had spent nearly 6 years with, Brandon Keller. Tall, charming, smooth-talking in that classic Chicago way, Brandon was the kind of man any American mom would gladly give her blessing to. We met at a year-end networking event. I was there to scout clients. He was just killing time waiting for a friend. Hard to believe a casual comment about a cocktail glass kicked off a relationship that spanned almost a quarter of my life. Brandon made the world feel small enough for two. And out of all the choices I had, I chose to believe he was home. One evening in the fall, Brandon took me to Lake Calhoun, the same spot where we talked late into the night on our first date. He planned a small picnic by the water with candles, red wine, and pastries from my favorite bakery. When Brandon got down on one knee and that sapphire ring shimmered under the lights, I didn't even wait for him to finish the question. I said yes. I thought my life had just turned a new page, until that night. It was a Monday. I got back from San Diego earlier than expected because a meeting was canceled. Brandon had no idea I was coming back. I wanted to surprise him, maybe cook dinner together, or just hold him after 3 days apart. I still had a key to his apartment. When I walked in, the lights were off, no sound except for the ticking clock in the kitchen. I quietly stepped toward the sofa and saw Brandon's phone charging. The screen lit up, messages kept popping up. I can still smell you on me. Last night was the best yet. Today, I just want to scream that I stole you. Sender M. Hartman. I froze. Hartman? No, that couldn't be. I opened the contact info to confirm. Madison Hartman. My own sister. 24, art student, still living with our parents in St. Paul. The same sister I defended when her ex-boyfriend broke her heart. The one I split my senior year scholarship with because she couldn't afford new brushes for her final project. I collapsed onto the chair, phone shaking in my hand, the noise in my head, laughter, my heartbeat, my voice calling Brandon's name, shattered into an eerie silence. Half an hour later, Brandon walked in holding 2 lattes from the cafe downstairs. The moment he saw me, his face turned pale. "You're early?" I didn't answer. They held out his phone, screen still glowing. "Why Madison?" He exhaled hard, setting the coffee down. "Ava, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to turn into this." "How long?" He buried his face in his hands. "Been around 3 months, but I was going to tell you. I really was." I slid the engagement ring off my finger and placed it on the table. The metallic clink it made sounded brutally final, like the truth crashing down on me. My family's reactions were a tangled mess. My mother, Laura, called me the next morning. Her voice was weary. "Ava, this is awful, but you and Madison are sisters. Blood. You can't let this ruin everything." I let out a dry laugh. "And how do you plan to fix it? Host a cozy dinner so we can share the same groom?" "Don't say that. I just don't want our family falling apart." Falling apart? I wasn't the one who tore it open. My father, Richard, was a different story. At a family dinner, just as Madison introduced Brandon as her official boyfriend, my dad slammed his hand on the table, sending a fork flying. "No daughter of mine destroys her sister's engagement. None." He stood up and walked out without looking back. What followed didn't feel like days. I moved through time like someone surviving a car crash. Still breathing, still eating, still showing up at the office, but mentally stranded in an intersection of memory. In meetings, as executives discussed next quarter's strategy, all I could hear was Madison's laugh in the birthday video Brandon filmed last year. I didn't cry much. I didn't have the time to fall apart, but something deep inside me cracked. The belief that I was worthy of love, that didn't need to be fought for. That's when I decided this wouldn't end with a pitiful apology. I was coming back, not for Brandon, but for myself. I moved out in 4 days. The photos once hanging on our walls were now sealed in cardboard. I took nothing from Brandon except a coat he'd left on the sofa, not because I wanted it, but because I forgot it was his. My new place in Uptown was smaller, had lower ceilings, and was far from downtown. But at least there, I didn't have to stare at the crack in the bedroom wall where I used to lean every morning as Brandon hugged me from behind and asked, "Coffee or tea today?" I didn't reply to my mom's texts. After one last call, where Madison showed up with smug eyes and muttered, "I didn't choose for this to happen," I knew anything more would just drain me. My dad occasionally sent texts, just a fist emoji or a sunrise. I saved them, never replied, never deleted. By day, I buried myself in meetings. The company was ramping up for the new campaign, so I used overtime as a shield. I stayed late, tweaking reports that didn't need revising, editing slides no one asked for. Occasionally, coworkers asked, "Ava, you doing okay?" I smiled briefly, just focused. No one dug deeper. Maybe they'd seen Madison's wedding teaser on Facebook, captioned, "Right person, right time." At night, I'd stand at the sink, hands soaking in ice-cold water. I barely ate, leftover rice, boxed pizza, or nothing. Some nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, whispering one question over and over. Why my own sister? No answer ever came. No one owed me one. Then Celine showed up. She was my college roommate, now working at an ad agency in Denver. That afternoon, I was fumbling with sample displays when I heard urgent knocking. The door swung open. Deserta I booked the earliest flight after I heard, "Heva, you look..." She threw her bag on the chair and wrapped her arms around me like I might shatter. I stood stiff. That simple act of being held made tears nearly burst out, but my throat clamped shut. That night, we sat by the window with glasses of bourbon. "I saw the wedding photos," Celine said bluntly. "Thoughts? If someone's willing to betray their own blood, they don't deserve anything from the past." I shut my eyes. Her words cut clean but precise. Celine didn't just bring comfort. She brought something essential, a business card. Dr. Elena Brenner, clinical psychologist. She helped me through my divorce. I took it. The card was thin, corners slightly curled, but the print was clear. 3 days later, I walked into Dr. Brenner's office, a red brick building near Lake Harriet. The waiting room smelled of lavender, soft jazz playing overhead. I sat silently at first, planning to say everything, but nothing came out. She looked at me over silver glasses. "We have time, no rush." 10 minutes later, I spoke, not in a calm tone, but a broken one. I talked about Brandon, Madison, the ring I didn't know what to do with, about my mom urging me to be the bigger person, about my dad's quiet disappointment. She nodded slowly. "Ava, betrayal by a stranger hurts one way, but betrayal by blood, that cuts deeper. It shakes your sense of worth. You don't need to heal fast, you just need to be honest." That day's session ended with another appointment. Back home, I pulled the ring from the drawer, slipped it into an envelope, sealed it shut. I didn't throw it away. I didn't keep it either. I just dropped it in the mailbox, addressed to Brandon, no note inside. In the weeks that followed, I walked the lake every morning. No headphones, no phone. I started eating again. Oatmeal, boiled eggs, mashed avocado. Simple, but warm. I no longer checked Madison's Instagram or browsed through old photos. I still saw Dr. Brenner weekly. Some sessions came with a soft laugh, others with messy tears. But at least I was speaking truth now. One late evening, sorting through books, I found The Places That Scare You by Pema Chadron. Inside, a college note in my handwriting. "No one has the right to steal your trust, unless you hand it over unguarded." I closed the book, not because I had forgiven, but because I was starting to remember who I was before Brandon, before it all broke. Winter crept in slowly. Snow powdered the steps of my new apartment. I sat by the window with ginger tea in hand, golden lamplight brushing against tangled hair. Outside, the world was still cold, but something inside had begun to thaw. On a Tuesday morning, just as I stepped out of Dr. Brenner's office, the front desk clerk called out, "Is Ava Hartman? There's a signed delivery from Ohio." I signed with a sinking weight in my chest. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, tied with a soft blue satin ribbon, the kind you'd only see in luxury bridal magazines. I opened it right there in the lobby, not bothering to wait until I got home. The first thing I saw was the gold embossed lettering. "Vanessa Hartman and Brandon Keller request the pleasure of your company." I didn't read beyond that. The February wind sliced through the glass doors, but it wasn't as sharp as the sensation in my chest. A wedding invite. Their names, side by side, bold and elegant, like they hadn't trampled over me to get there. Then came the handwritten note. "Eva, I hope you'll be there on the most important day of my life. I believe we can move past all the misunderstandings. I truly want you standing next to me that day, like the big sister I've always looked up to. V." I called Celine immediately. She picked up within 2 rings. "They invited you?" "Not just invited, Vanessa wrote it herself. This has to be a provocation. Who else could be that oblivious?" "Madison Hartman?" Silence stretched on the other end. "Are you going?" I didn't answer right away. Over the following days, my mom's name kept flashing on my phone. When I didn't pick up, she switched to text. "Ava, don't let the past rob you of a chance to reconnect. The whole family's waiting for you." Then my dad, quiet since I moved out, called. I answered. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, sweetheart." The invite came. "I don't support this, but she's still your sister." I sighed. "It's not your fault. You've protected me more than anyone ever has. I'm not asking you to go, but if you do, go for yourself. No one else." That afternoon, I walked around Lake Harriet. Wind stung my face. My eyes burned, and not from the cold. I tried to picture myself sitting at the ceremony, holding a champagne flute, forcing a smile. But something inside me resisted running away again. Back home, I laid the invitation on the table. Hours passed as I stared at those 2 raised names. A quiet defiance stirred, not to crash the party or beg them to remember what they'd done. I wanted them to see I'm still standing, in spite of it all. That night, I called Celine back. "I'm going." "Eva?" "Not for forgiveness, for closure." A moment passed. "If you walk into that room, you're not walking in alone." Celine immediately launched what she dubbed Operation Closure. "First, we need a dress that makes people forget why the wedding even exists." We visited a high-end boutique in the North Loop. I chose a sapphire mauve-fitted gown, low back, elegantly cut neckline, not to make a scene, but to remind myself I wasn't the girl who once curled up sobbing in bed. Next came the date. I declined every setup offer. I didn't want anyone dragged into a storm that wasn't theirs. But fate had a different plan. At an art exhibit sponsored by my company, I met Noah Sterling, a freelance photographer who'd shot for National Geographic and recently moved back to Minneapolis after 4 years in Nairobi. We talked about light, composition, faraway places, and the strange ache of returning home. The conversation lasted the entire gallery showing. When the lights dimmed, I realized we hadn't moved from each other's side. When I told him about the wedding invite from my sister and ex, Noah paused. "Do you want me to come with you?" "Only if you feel right about it. If being there helps you reclaim your balance, I'm in." I nodded, not to prove anything, but because I was finally ready to meet my own gaze in the mirror. The week before the wedding moved like a gentle whirlwind. I kept up therapy, ate and slept on schedule, trained with Celine's fitness coach. I wasn't letting emotions steer. Every task was a stitch in repairing my worn-down dignity. The night before the wedding, I fixed myself a light cocktail, cracked the window to let in cool air. Celine messaged, "Tomorrow, You don't walk into a battlefield, you walk into a room where no one gets to steal your emotional freedom again. I set the phone down, inhaled deeply, and knew this. When I step forward, I'm not bringing the past. I walk as Ava, not the woman betrayed, but the one who's walking through the fog, unafraid to be seen. Celine called her plan Reclaiming Ava. Dramatic, but honestly, the perfect name. You're not walking into that wedding to endure it. You're walking in as proof that no one gets to destroy you. Each morning, I woke up early and ran around the lake with EDM blasting in my ears. Every lap felt like peeling away another memory. Celine dragged me to a boutique gym where we trained with Marcus, a beaming coach who kept saying, "This isn't revenge, it's so you look in the mirror and want to stay with the woman standing there." I started choosing my lingerie, perfume, and nail polish again. Those seemingly trivial choices gave me a sense of control. Celine took me to a Korean salon on Nicolette Avenue. The hairstylist, Hana, handled her scissors like she was painting, trimming away split ends as if she were cutting off old memories. When I looked in the mirror, the woman staring back wasn't the same Ava, whose hands once trembled while asking, "Why her?" The dress was chosen on the third Saturday of my rebirth journey. It was a wine-colored silk gown with off-the-shoulder sleeves and a bold yet elegant slit. When I stepped out of the fitting room, Celine, sitting outside, went quiet. That's the color of victory. Doesn't need anyone's approval as long as you know. I was almost ready, just missing one thing. Someone to walk in with. When Celine suggested a male model she'd worked with in a campaign, I shook my head. I don't want a stranger pretending to be my date. It'll feel like a bad play. Then who? Someone who doesn't have to try to impress. The answer came on a Wednesday evening at a school arts charity auction, part of a program I manage. I was helping oversee guest check-in when a man's voice spoke beside me. "Excuse me, did I just miss Lake in Canvas?" I turned. The man stood over 6 feet tall, short brown hair, black rolled-up shirt sleeves, a loosened tie, and a soft cedarwood scent. He extended a hand. "Maxwell Rowan. I sponsored the exhibition, Space Design." His handshake was firm, his gaze steady. I nodded. "Ava Hartman, I'm managing this event." We started talking about displays, budgets, and the risks of shipping mixed media pieces. What began as a professional exchange slowly turned personal. He told me about living in Lisbon for 2 years, working on a community library series, about a housing project in Patagonia, and that he had just returned to Minneapolis to care for his sick mother. I mentioned my balcony garden, how I still bought fresh flowers even though I lived alone. The party wrapped up around 10 p.m. As I reached for my coat, Maxwell stepped closer. "Can I ask something personal?" I raised an eyebrow. "Depends how personal. Are you looking for someone to accompany you to a place you don't want to go alone?" I laughed, not because the question was funny, but because it was oddly accurate. That's complicated. Let me guess. An ex is getting married, you got an invite, and you want to show up like it doesn't affect you anymore. I stared at him. Maxwell shrugged. "I dated a screenwriter. They're not great at hiding plot twists." I chuckled again, genuinely this time. If I needed someone to go with me, I'd want someone who doesn't make me feel like I'm acting. I don't do theater, but I show up. I nodded. Let's see if this even feels like acting. We met again the next day at a cafe near St. Mark's Church. Under the warm glow of pendant lights, I noticed the little things about Maxwell. A faint scar on his thumb, how he turned his cup before sipping, and that he always placed his phone face down. We talked about everything except Cameron or Madison. Italian cuisine, contemporary architecture shows in Seattle, the Fountainhead, and the tension between passion and ego. I hadn't planned to fall for anyone, but when Maxwell gently brushed my hand as we stepped down from the cafe's porch, I didn't pull away. It didn't feel awkward. It felt like permission. 3 weeks before the wedding, there I was, once betrayed by my own sister and fiancé, preparing to show up with a man who felt both unfamiliar and strangely grounding. I didn't know if this was revenge or just a new transition, but after our coffee date, Maxwell texts, "If you still want me there, I'll stand by you. Not for them, for you." I placed a hand over my chest. Something just stitched back together, not fully healed, but no longer bleeding. The charcoal SUV pulled up outside Stonebridge Hall, a resort overlooking the Mississippi River where Vanessa and Brandon were holding their 3-day wedding celebration. I stepped out first. The wine-colored gown moved gracefully with the breeze. Maxwell followed, resting his hand gently on my lower back, a touch that never pushed, only supported. Inside the hall, glass clinked softly beneath the strings of a quartet playing Clair de Lune. No one looked directly at us, but glances shifted, brief, subtle. I didn't smile. I walked forward. It felt like stepping onto a stage without a script. Celine approached and whispered, "You just made the entire room hold its breath." Maxwell pulled out my chair. "We didn't come here to shout," he said as he poured water into my glass. "We came to be real." Dinner was a 3-course French meal. I barely touched my plate. Brandon and Vanessa sat at the center table under a spotlight that made them look polished, almost artificial. Brandon's eyes flicked toward me during appetizers, blank and quick. I kept talking with Maxwell, listening to him describe a wooden bridge he once designed for a village in Bhutan. Each word from him was an anchor, keeping me from drifting back into places I didn't want to revisit. Dessert was being served when a microphone interrupted the clinking of silverware. Vanessa stood, champagne flute in hand, her gown shimmering. "I know some guests arrived here with hesitation," she paused, eyes landing briefly on me, then went on. "But love has its way. Some are first choices, others are forever choices." No one laughed. A few whispers stirred. Celine gripped my hand tighter. Maxwell said nothing. I stayed still. There was nothing left to prove. Then Maxwell rose. Not rushed, not dramatic. He picked up his glass and tapped it 3 times. "Sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to say something." He turned, gaze calm, collected. "I'm Maxwell Rowan. I'm here not because of anyone's past, but because of someone's present." All eyes turned, not because he was loud, but because no one expected someone to stand in the middle of a wedding and speak like a quiet declaration. I don't know the full story between the bride, the groom, or anyone else in this room, but I do know there's a woman here named Ava Hartman who had the courage to face a pain that most would rather bury. She didn't come to cling. She didn't come to shame. She came because she's strong enough to not hide. I didn't blink. The room fell still, as if even breath held back. Maxwell looked toward me, but spoke to the entire room. "If anyone ever thought Ava was just the first choice, let me clarify. She's not a placeholder. She's someone worthy enough not to need anyone's validation." A soft "wow" echoed from the back. I turned and saw Sandra, my mom's longtime friend, nodding with teary eyes. Maxwell raised his glass, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'm lucky to walk beside her, and if anyone ever walked away from Ava, that's their loss, not hers." He placed the mic down and returned to his seat like he hadn't just stood up in the middle of a lavish wedding. No one clapped, no one dared speak loudly, but the air had shifted. Brandon sat frozen, hands tightly clasped. Vanessa still wore a smile, but her lips quivered. I leaned toward Maxwell and whispered, "But you just became the most dangerous man in the room." He smiled. "I just said what everyone needed to hear, but wouldn't." The reception carried on, but every conversation afterward drifted away from the bride and groom. People asked for Maxwell's name, requested his card, recalled architectural projects of his they'd read about, never expecting to meet the mind behind them today. I passed by Vanessa backstage as she adjusted her gown's train. She held her glass tight, wine untouched. "Didn't think you'd show up with him," I replied evenly. "Not to prove anything, just to reclaim myself." She didn't argue. She muttered instead, "Brandon doesn't look at me the way he looked at you." I said nothing. Didn't need to. Not anymore. As Maxwell and I stepped out of the hall, Brandon's eyes met mine one last time. Through a mirror by the door, lost, pale, no longer glowing like a winner. I gently squeezed Maxwell's hand. Let's go. Outside, the night breeze was cool, like water rinsing away what once stained the past. I climbed into the car, head high, heart steady, not vengeful, not expecting anyone to pay, just whole. The auxiliary dressing room near the bridal gown area sat empty after the first dance. I slipped in for a quiet moment to fix smudged lipstick from the wine. The door suddenly burst open. Vanessa walked in without knocking. Her gown gathered in her arms, lace neckline slightly drooping. She'd clearly rushed. Did you get what you came for? I didn't turn. Her words hit like a thrown blade. Came for what? To steal the spotlight, to make everyone look at you like you're the wounded saint and I'm the worst traitor in America. I turned. The mirror's white lights lit Vanessa's tense face. You did that all on your own. She smirked, half smile, half bite. That guy, Maxwell, right? Did he memorize a script, or did you hire an actor? I braced my hands on the counter, voice low. He didn't need a script, it was all real. Vanessa stepped back slightly, not expecting that answer. She looked at me through the mirror. Not directly, but at my reflection. The way people do when they're afraid to face truth. I saw how he looks at you. Brandon never looked at me like that, no matter how hard I tried. I stayed quiet. Vanessa had never admitted anything close to this before. You were always first, always chosen. People always compared me to you. They'd say I was pretty, but you were smart. I was creative, but you were steady. Every compliment for me came with a but, like Ava. I narrowed my eyes. Brennan wasn't about love, was he? Vanessa gave a bitter laugh. Not at first. I didn't plan to fall for him. I just wanted something you didn't have. I stepped closer. So you destroyed the one thing I thought was safe? I didn't mean to. He listened to me. He saw me. At first it was rage, then it felt like finally being noticed, and then it spun out of control. She sank onto the bench, head in hands. Every day I waited for you to hate me, just so I wouldn't have to keep pretending anymore. I stayed silent. No words could undo what was already done. So now what? I asked. Do you feel like you've won? Vanessa slowly shook her head. No, I feel empty. No dress, no applause can fill the fact that I broke the only bond we had left. Silence thickened between us, blocking out every sound from the ballroom. I stepped over, opened the mini fridge, pulled out a water bottle, and handed it to her. Drink, your lips are shaking. Vanessa looked up, eyes glassy. You still care? Hard habit to break. We sat quietly, no mention of Brandon, none needed. After a pause, Vanessa whispered, If I said, I'm sorry, would it matter? I sat up straighter. What matters isn't the apology, it's how you live after it. She nodded, no defense. I stood, adjusted the strap on my shoulder. I didn't come to hurt you, but I'm not here to protect your feelings anymore either. I get it. As I walked to the door, Vanessa called out, Act well. He's real, isn't he? I turned, saw a rare, serious look in her eyes. He didn't choose me to make a point. He chose me because I didn't have to prove anything. Vanessa dropped her gaze. She said nothing more. I opened the door. Before stepping out, I paused without turning around. You used to be the one I trusted most. You broke that. But if one day you want to rebuild it, I'll let you try. There was no response. But as I closed the door, I heard a long exhale behind me. Soft, but clear enough to know something was beginning to crack in the shell Vanessa had built around herself. I walked back into the hall. The music resumed and warm lights draped over Maxwell's shoulders as he spotted me. He didn't ask anything. He just held my hand. The way someone holds on to what matters most in a room full of people, but empty of meaning. I squeezed his hand back. Not for my sister, not for Brandon, but because I had held on to myself. In all the loss, I never once let go of the one thing that mattered most, being honest with my own heart. The next morning, I woke up in Maxwell's apartment. Sunlight streamed through the curtains like soft silk spilling across the dark wooden floor. He was making coffee in the kitchen, his hair still tousled, an old t-shirt with a drop of milk near the collar. Soft jazz played from a small speaker on the bookshelf. I sat on the couch, hugged a pillow close. The strangest feeling that day wasn't exhaustion or disappointment. It was the absence of residue. No anger, no sadness, no haunting. Just a calm space deep enough to inhale without choking on memories. Maxwell brought over 2 cappuccinos. He sat beside me, tilting his head. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking, if yesterday was an ending, maybe today can be something else." I smiled, placed my hand on his thigh. Something else, but not in a rush. We spent the morning walking through the farmer's market near Lake Harriet. He picked dried lavender to hang in the kitchen. I chose a bundle of yellow tulips to place in the white porcelain vase on the dining table. We stopped by a used bookstore, flipping through thin poetry books printed on slightly faded paper. Maxwell picked Leaves of Grass. I picked Milk and Honey, pretending not to notice we were building a shared ritual. That evening, he told me not to cook anything. Just wear something cozy and step out onto the balcony. I've got the rest. I tied my hair up, wore a wide-neck sweater and gray joggers. When I stepped out, candles were scattered across the small wooden table, a tray of tarts, fresh strawberries, soft cheeses, and red wine. In his hand was a small box, deep blue velvet, resting still like it had never planned to appear tonight. I froze. Maxwell lifted his wineglass, sat across from me. No kneeling, no speech, no pressure. I hadn't touched the box yet. "Can you open it?" He nodded, silently flipped the lid. Inside wasn't a glittering diamond like a TV commercial. It was a platinum ring with a violet moon sapphire slim band, classic style. Simple, but deep. "I'm not asking you to marry me right away. I just want to ask if you'd like to start something built with time, not haste or expectations." I reached out, not for him to put it on me, but just to touch the edge of the stone. "I don't want a grand wedding." "Good, because I don't have enough relatives to fill a round table." I laughed. "I want commitment that doesn't depend on paperwork. I want trust that doesn't need proving." I looked at him for a long while, not waiting for anything, just admiring how his brown eyes didn't flinch, didn't calculate. I say yes, but let's take it slow. Maxwell didn't rush to place the ring on my finger. He handed it to me, letting me slip it on myself, like it was entirely my choice, without pressure. The stone sat neatly on my hand, not flashy, but when candlelight hit it, I saw a soft glow settle over my heart. After that night, I called my dad. He was gardening, wind rustling through the phone. "Are you okay?" "I'm learning how to be kind to myself." Dad paused, then softly said, "I'm proud of you, Ava." I didn't mention the ring or the commitment. Didn't need to. My father never asked much, but always understood when my peace was real. A week later, I got a text from Madison. Nothing elaborate, I just booked a session with a therapist. Thanks for giving me a chance to look back. I didn't reply right away, but I saved that message, like a rough draft of a beginning, not for sisterhood, but for growth, for both of us. Maxwell and I didn't move in together. We kept our separate apartments, our own spaces, but alternated dinners, read side by side, and sometimes just sat in silence. I no longer dreamed of Brandon. Didn't flinch when someone wore a suit like his, didn't feel anything passing Vanessa's photos. When I told Maxwell I wanted to spend next year traveling the Pacific Northwest mountains, he simply asked, "How many layers of coats do I need to not freeze?" We never labeled our relationship with fixed words like marriage or family, but we called each other with trust every time the day ended and we still wanted the other person there. 1 month after the wedding, I got a text from Mom while Maxwell and I were prepping dinner in his apartment. Just one sentence. Vanessa and Cameron came back earlier than planned. Something's wrong. I set my phone down on the counter. Didn't reply. Maxwell looked at me from across the stove, still stirring the greens. Need me to turn the music up? He smiled. No, this quiet is enough. Ugh. Days later, rumors swirled in the family group chat. An aunt in Ohio said Cameron had been caught arguing in a Bora Bora hotel lobby with the front desk clerk. A cousin hinted Vanessa locked her social media after posting a cryptic story. Trust anyone but the one who once promised to protect you. Mom called, this time on FaceTime. I answered after a few hesitant seconds. She was at the dining table, barefaced, voice tired. You haven't been home in weeks. I'm fine, just been busy. Vanessa isn't okay. She won't say it, but I can tell. I stayed quiet. Can't you come over for a family dinner? I leaned back in my chair, stared at the ceiling. Mom, it's not my job to be the only one holding everything together. The air on the other end thickened. But you're avoiding? No, I'm choosing. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're protection. Mom didn't say anything more. The call ended with the soft tap of her finger on the red button. No tears, no convincing, just silence. Like an ellipsis hanging between two women who used to be each other's world. I redirected my focus to work, to launching summer campaigns for the retail network, to quiet coffee mornings with Maxwell. He started introducing me to his close friends. At a backyard barbecue in St. Paul, I was introduced as the one who got Maxwell to stop hiding behind blueprints. One of his friends leaned in and whispered. He never said more than 3 words about personal stuff, but now, just say Ava, and his eyes light up. I didn't need that to confirm anything, but honestly, it felt nice. We kept a healthy space between us, just enough not to blur into each other. He lived on the 8th floor, I on the 12th, in the same building. Sometimes we sent food up to each other by elevator. One time, I received a box of garlic bread with a small note. If it feels like something's missing when you eat this alone, you're right. It's me. 3 months after Vanessa's wedding, Mom sent a long email. The first in years she didn't use texts. She said Vanessa was attending a therapy group, Cameron had moved out, and no one knew how much longer they could still call themselves married. The last line read, "Even if you don't come back, I hope you don't turn your back." I didn't reply right away. I thought for a long time. Then I sent a short message with a photo of me and Maxwell in Duluth from our trip last month. I'm not turning my back, Mom. I'm just learning how to move forward. Fall came early, with fiery red leaves around Lake Nokomis. Maxwell and I laid out a blanket on the grass, surrounded by kids laughing and the scent of apple pie from a nearby food cart. I rested my head on his thigh, listening to him talk about renovating a small museum in Wisconsin. His voice was steady and calm, like time itself had stopped rushing. I used to think love had to come through storms, wild and cinematic. I laughed. And now? Now I think love is choosing each other every day, quietly, without comparison, without needing anyone else to understand. I turned to face him. Aren't you afraid peace might feel boring? And more afraid of losing you? That sentence didn't carry desperation, just honesty. So pure, it disarmed every last bit of caution in me. On Thanksgiving, I received a handwritten letter from Vanessa. Her slanted handwriting was still the same, with ink smudged here and there as if written while thinking deeply. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to start again, if you'll allow it. I kept the letter on my desk for a week. Then I mailed back a hand-drawn postcard with a single line. Relearning how to be sisters is like relearning how to ride a bike. You might fall, but you should still try. My life didn't end the day I was betrayed. It simply turned a quiet shift, not grand, but steady. I thought I had lost everything. But then I realized losing what never truly belonged made room for what always should have. Maxwell placed a hand on my shoulder as I sat by the window, watching the first snow fall. Where do you think we should go in January? I turned to him, smiling softly. Somewhere sunny, but not too bright like how you entered my life. And so, we began another journey. No baggage from the past, just each other. Eva's story is proof that betrayal isn't the end. It's often the beginning of self-healing and rebirth. Instead of drowning in resentment, she stepped back, set boundaries, and rebuilt her self-worth from the wreckage. Ava didn't seek revenge, nor did she look for validation from those who hurt her. She found herself. And then love came as a worthy reward. In life, sometimes the most painful break leads to the most beautiful path. What do you think of Ava's choices? Was she too forgiving, or was that calm strength her greatest victory? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories to come.